The night sky above the alien city was full of smoke and fire. Buildings burned like giant torches, sending thick black clouds into the air. The streets were full of screaming civilians, running in every direction. Explosions shook the ground. Making the broken walls tremble, Ethan ran through the chaos, his boots splashing in puddles of dirty water. He wasn't supposed to be here. His mission had ended hours ago, but the evacuation ship was late. He could have stayed hidden in the ruins until it arrived. But then he heard the cry. It was faint, almost lost in the noise of war. A voice soft. But desperate calling for help, he froze. Scanning the shadows between two collapsed towers, there, half buried under smoking debris, was a figure, small, delicate, her silver hair tangled and covered in dust. Her glowing eyes blinked weakly. As she tried to push away the heavy metal beam trapping her leg, Ethan's instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he ran towards her. Ignoring the sounds of gunfire in the distance, the air smelled of burnt metal and blood as he got closer. He saw her alien robes torn and stained, but still carrying strange golden symbols. She wasn't just any civilian, she was important. Maybe even royalty. "Stay still," he shouted, kneeling beside her. Her lips moved, but the words were in her own language he didn't understand. But her eyes. Her eyes were full of both fear and something else, hope. He grabbed the metal beam and pulled with all his strength. The metal groaned, hot from the nearby fires. His arms shook, but he refused to stop. Finally, with one last effort, he lifted it just enough for her to slide her leg free. She gasped in pain as he pulled her out, cradling her in his arms. Blaster fire lit the street behind them. Shadows moved enemy soldiers searching. Ethan ducked into a side alley, carrying her close. To his chest, she was light, fragile, and trembling. Her breathing was fast, like a frightened animal. He found a half-destroyed doorway and stepped inside. The roof above was half gone. But it was enough cover for now. He set her down gently, checking her leg. It was badly bruised, but not broken. Still, she wouldn't be able to run. Suddenly, she reached up and grabbed his collar. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Her voice shook as she whispered something again. He leaned closer, trying to catch the words. "You saved me," she said slowly, this time in broken human language. Her accent was strange, musical. Her eyes searched his face, as if looking for something only she could see. Before he could answer, she spoke again, soft, but with an urgency that sent a chill through him. "Now, you must claim your right." Of first night, Ethan blinked. He thought maybe he had heard wrong. First night. What was she talking about? But the way she said it, it wasn't a joke. Her expression was deadly serious. Her hands still held onto him, her nails slightly. Digging into his jacket, footsteps echoed outside. Ethan pushed the strange words to the back of his mind and pulled her closer. He listened. 3, maybe 4 soldiers. Getting nearer, he adjusted his grip on his rifle. The alien girl's eyes widened, as if she realized he was about to fight for her again. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. Voices whispered in a language Ethan didn't understand. One of them stepped inside, slowly, weapon ready. Ethan didn't wait. He lunged forward, slamming the soldier into the wall. The fight was fast and silent. Ethan knew sound would bring more. The soldier collapsed, unconscious, and Ethan grabbed the girl, moving deeper into the ruins. They kept moving until they reached a small, underground chamber. Only a single crack in the wall let in the faint glow of the burning city. Here, finally, it was quiet. The girl sank against the wall. Breathing heavily, Ethan sat across from her. Still watching the entrance in case someone followed, she spoke again. Slower now, as if teaching a child. "In my people's law, a man who saves a high-born woman's life earns the right of." First night, she swallowed hard, her eyes glistening in the dim light. "It is a promise, a binding. If you refuse, they will take me to another. A cruel one. Ethan stared at her. The war outside seemed distant compared to the strange weight of her words. He didn't understand her culture. But he understood Firend. She was terrified. Whatever this first night meant, it was more than just tradition. It was her only shield, far above. Another explosion shook the ground, dust falling from the cracked ceiling. Ethan tightened his jaw. This wasn't what he expected when he came to this planet, but now he had to decide. Her life depended on it. Ethan stayed silent for a long moment, listening to the muffled rumble of distant battle. The alien girl's words still echoed in his mind. He didn't know the exact meaning of this first night, but her expression told him it was more than a simple custom. It was survival. She was breathing quickly, her silver hair falling over her face, her hands clutching the edge of her torn robe. Outside, voices passed by again, armed patrols searching the ruins. Ethan waited until the sound faded before moving closer to her. He spoke slowly, knowing she only understood some of his language. "Tell me why," he asked, his voice low. "Why me? Why this right?" Her glowing eyes met his. There was no hesitation now. "Because you saved me. You are my only choice," she said, struggling to form the words. "If you refuse, my enemies will take me. I will be given to the warlord. He will break me and take my clan." Her voice trembled on the last words. Ethan didn't answer right away. He rubbed a hand over his face, trying to make sense of it. "And if I agree," he asked, "what happens then?" She swallowed. "You become my protector, my bond. They cannot touch me without challenging you. And no one here will challenge the one who saved me from death." A deep boom shook the ground above them. Dust rained down. She flinched and instinctively reached for his arm. Ethan glanced toward the only exit. He knew staying here was dangerous, but moving through the streets with her injured leg would be worse. He looked back at her, the firelight from outside casting shadows across her face. "You're telling me this is the only way to keep you safe," he said. She nodded once, firmly. "Only way." Part of him wanted to walk away. This wasn't his war, his planet, or his problem. But another part, the part that had made him run into the fire to save her, knew he couldn't. He had seen the fear in her eyes, and fear like that wasn't a lie. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from above. Closer this time, Ethan reached for his rifle, motioning her to stay quiet. The sound stopped, and a moment later, a figure dropped down into the chamber from the broken ceiling. A tall alien soldier with dark armor and a jagged blade, his eyes fixed on the girl. Ethan moved fast, stepping between them. The soldier snarled something in his own language, pointing at the girl. Ethan didn't need a translation. He knew this was one of her enemies. The soldier lunged, but Ethan sidestepped and slammed the butt of his rifle into the alien's jaw. The blow staggered him, but he came back swinging. Steel clashed against metal, the sound sharp in the enclosed space. The girl pressed herself against the wall, her breathing fast and shallow. Ethan feinted left, then kicked the soldier's knee. The alien dropped to one side, and Ethan used the moment to smash his weapon down again. The armored figure crumpled. The fight was over. Ethan's chest rose and fell as he stepped back. The girl was watching him with wide eyes, a mix of fear and awe. "You fight like a true predator," she whispered, her voice almost reverent. He ignored the comment and dragged the unconscious soldier into a corner, making sure he wouldn't wake soon. When Ethan sat down again, the girl didn't look away from him. "Do you see now?" she said. "Without you, I am nothing but prey. They will hunt me until I am theirs." Her words hit harder than he expected for a long time. The only sound was the faint crackle of fire outside. Ethan's mind raced. This rite she spoke of was more than some ancient ritual. It was a shield that could save her from being taken and used. But it would also chain him to her in a world that was already falling apart. She leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but unshakable. "You do not have to want me, human. You only have to take the rite. Say the words and I will be safe." Ethan stared at her. The war, the danger, the chaos, it all seemed to fade for a second, leaving only her determined gaze. Finally, he exhaled. "All right," he said. His voice quiet. "I'll do it. But not for your tradition. I'm doing this to keep you alive." Her lips parted in what might have been the beginning of a smile. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a solemn nod. Above them, another explosion shook the building, reminding them the night was far from over. The air in the underground chamber felt heavier after Ethan spoke. The alien girl's eyes stayed on him as if memorizing his face. She didn't thank him, not yet. Instead, she shifted, wincing as her injured leg scraped against the stone floor. Ethan noticed the pain in her movements and moved closer, tearing a strip of cloth from his sleeve to bind the swelling as he worked. She spoke again, her voice low. "You don't know why I ran from them." Her eyes flickered toward the unconscious soldier in the corner. "That one was sent to drag me back, alive if possible, dead if not." Ethan tightened the cloth around her leg, his jaw set. "You said something about a warlord," he reminded her. She nodded slowly, her silver hair catching the faint light. "He is not just a warlord. He is my promised mate, chosen for me since birth, a man who sees women as possessions." Her tone was flat, but her hands twisted in her lap. "When my father fell in battle, his claim became stronger. I became the last key to the throne." Ethan sat back, his mind piecing together the picture. This wasn't only about her safety. This was about her entire people's power. "So if I take this right, I become the one standing between you and him," he said. She met his gaze. "Yes, and he will not dare challenge you yet, not while the city burns and the clans are divided." Outside, the sound of distant artillery rolled across the night. The ground trembled beneath them. Ethan glanced toward the exit, thinking of how far the evac point might be, but the girl's next words froze him. "If I am taken, it will not just be me who suffers. My servants, my kin, even the children of my clan will be given to his men." She said it without tears, as if she had repeated the nightmare to herself many times. Ethan studied her. This wasn't just a frightened woman begging for herself. It was someone willing to use any chance of ending him to shield the lives of others, and that thought made his choice feel heavier. Her gaze dropped for the first time, her voice quieter. "When I saw you in the street, I thought you would pass me by like the others, but you came, you carried me. You didn't even ask who I was." Ethan's lips tightened. He remembered the moment of how instinct had pulled him toward her without thought. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the occasional creak of the damaged building. Finally, she looked up again. "If you accept, the rite must be done before the next sunrise, or the claim is void." Ethan frowned. "And if I don't?" She hesitated, then said simply, "Then I belong to him." Ethan leaned back against the wall, staring at the cracked ceiling. He didn't believe in fate, but tonight felt like one of those moments where the universe pushed you into a corner and waited to see if you could fight your way out. A faint scratching sound from the hallway snapped him out of thought. He raised his rifle. The girl froze. The scratching turned into a soft tap, 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 then silence. Ethan stepped quietly toward the entrance, his boots silent on the stone. He peered out. Nothing. Only the flickering red glow of firelight. When he returned to her side, she was watching him closely, her eyes tracing every movement. "You carry yourself like a hunter," she said softly. "That is why I knew you could protect me." Ethan shook his head. "I'm just a soldier." but she tilted her head slightly. "No, you are something else." Her words lingered in the air, and Ethan found himself looking at her differently. Not just as someone he had to keep alive, but as someone who had been forced into a life she never wanted. He wondered how many times she had dreamed of running. How many times she had prayed for someone to stop the path she had been set on since birth. Another distant explosion made. The walls shiver. Ethan checked his weapon again, his mind sharpening. "Then we do this before sunrise," he said finally. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't smile. Instead, she nodded once. As if committing herself to the same dangerous path, from somewhere far above, the sound of a horn echoed long and low. The girl stiffened. "They are calling the hunt," she whispered. Ethan's brow furrowed. "The hunt?" she swallowed. "When prey escapes, the hunters gather. They will sweep the city for me until I am found." Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle, then weed. "Better make sure they don't," he said. The fires outside had burned lower, but the night air still carried the scent of smoke and blood. Ethan followed the alien girl through a narrow passage under the ruins. She limped, but moved with surprising speed. The tunnels opened into a vast chamber lit by pale blue flames. The light danced over carvings on the walls, faces of long-dead rulers, warriors, and queens. At the far end stood a set of tall silver doors, guarded by armored figures with curved spears, their eyes fixed on Ethan the moment he stepped into the light. They did not speak, but one turned and slammed the butt of his weapon against the floor. The sound echoed, and the doors began to open. Inside was a hall unlike anything Ethan had seen. The ceiling was high, held by black stone pillars. Shimmering cloths hung between them, glowing faintly as if woven with starlight. In the center of the hall stood a wide platform, and on it a circle marked with symbols that seemed to shift when he looked too long. The girl's voice was low, almost a whisper. "This is the chamber of binding." Ethan's gaze swept the room. Dozens of alien nobles filled the seats around the edges, their eyes cold and assessing. He could feel their distrust. Some even looked amused, as if waiting for him to fail. A tall figure approached, dressed in flowing robes of deep crimson, his face hidden beneath a mask shaped like a beast's skull. He carried a long silver staff that pulsed with faint light. "The claimant enters," the voice boomed, not in human tongue. But Ethan somehow understood the meaning. Perhaps the staff carried the translation. The alien girl stepped into the circle first, her movements slow and deliberate, every step part of a ritual older than memory. Ethan followed, his boots heavy against the smooth black floor. The murmurs in the hall grew louder. The masked figure spoke again, his voice rising. "A life saved, a bond owed, a right earned." The nobles murmured, some nodding in agreement, others glaring. Ethan felt the weight of every gaze pressing against him. The girl turned to face him, her eyes locked on his. There was no fear now, only a strange calm. She reached out her hand, the faintest tremor in her fingers. Ethan hesitated, but then placed his hand in hers. Her skin was warm despite the chill in the air. The masked figure raised the silver staff. "By the law of the first night, the Savior may claim, and the saved may bind." His words seemed to hum in the stone walls. The glow from the symbols on the floor grew brighter, wrapping around their feet like living light. Ethan's mind raced. The ritual was more than symbolic. He could feel something in the air pressing against him, testing him. The girl's grip tightened slightly, her lips barely moving. "Do not break contact, no matter what you feel," she whispered. The light surged upward, curling around their joined hands. And in that moment, Ethan felt something, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. It pulsed once, twice, then matched the rhythm of his. The girl's eyes widened slightly. Perhaps feeling the same, gasps echoed through the hall. The nobles shifting in their seats, Ethan caught fragments of their whispers. Words like true claim and impossible for a human. The masked figure lowered his staff, but his gaze seemed fixed on Ethan as if trying to solve a puzzle. The ritual ended with a soft fading of the light, the circle dimming to its original state. The girl let out a slow breath, turning slightly to address the hall, her voice steady. The right has been claimed, the bond sealed, by law and custom. I stand under his protection. For a moment there was silence, then the sharp sound of metal boots on stone. Ethan turned to see a man striding toward the platform, tall and broad, wearing armor etched with blackened scars. His eyes were fixed on the girl, but the hatred in them burned for Ethan. It didn't take much to guess who he was, the warlord. His voice was low, but carried through the hall. "You think you can hide behind a human?" he sneered. "This will not save you." Ethan didn't move, his hand still close to the girl's. The warlord's gaze shifted to him, his lips curling into a thin smile. "Enjoy your first night, human. It will be your last." The challenge in his tone was clear. The nobles seemed to hold their breath, waiting for Ethan's reaction. Ethan didn't answer with words. He simply met the warlord's stare, unblinking, a silent promise that whatever came next, he would not back down. The girl's fingers brushed against his, a silent message of her own. This fight was only beginning. The hall had emptied only partly, the nobles drifting away in small clusters. Whispering behind their jeweled masks, Ethan could feel their eyes on him, even as they left. Their curiosity mixed with disbelief. The alien girl stood beside him, her chin high, her expression carefully controlled. But he could sense the tension in the way her fingers curled at her sides. Servants appeared from hidden doorways carrying trays of strange food, steaming bowls of glowing broth, plates of meat that shimmered as if dusted with silver, and tall crystal flasks of deep red drink. The masked figure from the ceremony gestured for them to sit at the long, low table near the platform, the feast of the first night. He said in a voice that gave nothing away. Ethan sat, the girl taking the place beside him, the dishes placed before them looked both beautiful and suspicious. He wasn't sure which were meant to be eaten and which were dangerous to even touch. The girl leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do not drink from any cup you did not see poured." Her eyes scanned the room, sharp and alert. He nodded slightly, glancing around. The warlord had not left. He stood near the far end of the hall, speaking quietly with two armored figures. His expression unreadable, but his hands occasionally curling into fists. Ethan could tell he was waiting for something. The first toast was offered by an elder noble, a tall alien with white crystal horns. Ethan raised the cup as expected, but only let the drink touch his lips without swallowing. He caught the girl doing the same, a shared understanding passing between them. As the feast went on, the music began. Soft strings and a low drum beat that seemed to echo through the floor. Dancers in shimmering veils moved in slow, deliberate steps, their eyes never lifting from the ground. Ethan tried to keep his attention on the hall, the guards, the servants, anyone who might move wrong. Halfway through the feast, a servant approached with a platter of roasted meat. The scent was rich and smoky. Ethan noticed the girl's shoulders stiffen. She set down her utensil and did not touch the dish. When the servant placed the same meat before him, she murmured, "Do not eat." Her gaze locked on the platter. He obeyed without question, pushing it aside. Moments later, another servant took the plate away. Disappearing into the kitchens, the girl's voice was tense. It was laced with sleep root. "You would not have woken for a day." Before Ethan could reply, the hall's double doors slammed open. A figure in black armor stepped inside, moving fast. No servant or guard tried to stop him. Ethan's hand went to his weapon under the table, but the figure reached him in 3 strides and drew a curved blade. The girl shouted something sharp in her language. The attacker swung, but Ethan was already moving flipping the low table aside and driving into the man's chest. The impact sent them both to the floor. The blade clattered away, hands gripped at Ethan's jacket. Clawing for a hold, he struck hard, the sound of bone against stone echoing under the music. The attacker groaned and went still. Ethan rolled to his feet, his eyes sweeping the hall. The nobles were silent. Kay, their faces unreadable. The warlord stood in the shadows near the doorway, a slow smirk on his lips. Guards finally moved in, dragging the unconscious attacker away, but Ethan noticed they didn't take him far. Just into a side corridor, the girl rose to her feet, her hand briefly finding his arm, a touch meant for steadiness rather than affection. "This is only the first attempt," she said softly. "They will try again before dawn." Ethan glanced toward the warlord, their eyes meeting across the space. The man's smile didn't fade. If anything, it deepened. As though the failed attack had been nothing but a test, the masked figure from the ceremony stepped forward. Addressing the hall in a voice that cut through the tension, "The bond is sealed. The night is protected. No blade shall spill blood. Within these walls before the sun rises," his words sounded like law. But Ethan didn't trust them. The girl leaned closer to him, her voice low and certain. "They cannot kill you here, but they can make sure you never walk out." Ethan's jaw tightened. He understood the game now. The warlord didn't need to break the law to win. He just needed Ethan to vanish in the dark. The music resumed as if nothing had happened. Nobles began speaking again in low voices. The feast continued, but every movement felt heavy with danger. Ethan kept his weapon close, his other hand never far from hers. Both of them aware that the night was far from over. The music faded slowly, replaced by the soft murmur of voices. The nobles spoke among themselves in their flowing, alien tongue, their eyes darting toward Ethan and the girl again and again. The warlord remained near the edge of the hall, his smirk never fading, his gaze heavy like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The girl stood suddenly, her chair scraping lightly against the stone floor. The sound drew every eye in the room. Her silver hair caught the light of the high torches as she stepped away from the table. Ethan rose with her, ready for whatever was about to happen. She moved to the center of the hall, her limp barely visible now. Her voice carried across the space, speaking first in her language, the sound sharp and commanding. The nobles straightened in their seats, some leaning forward. Ethan couldn't understand the words until she switched to broken human speech. Her eyes locked on his. "You have seen, all of you," she said. "He saved me in fire. He fought for me in shadow. He stood when others would kneel." Her voice grew stronger. "By our law, I am his, but by my will, he is mine." The hall seemed to hold its breath. The warlord's expression hardened. The masked figure shifted slightly, as if unsure whether to interrupt. The girl took another step forward, still speaking to the room, but her gaze never leaving Ethan. "From this night, no hand shall touch me without touching him first. No blade shall strike me without facing his wrath." The nobles began to murmur. Again, some in approval, others in outrage. The girl raised her hand for silence. "I name him protector of my life, keeper of my bond, and heir to my honor." Her words were not part of the ritual Ethan had seen before. They were something she had chosen herself, and from the reaction in the room, it was clear she had just broken tradition. Ethan's instincts told him this was dangerous, too bold. But the pride in her voice left no doubt she had meant every word. He stepped toward her, his presence solid at her side. The warlord, finally, moved from his place, his boots striking the floor like the sound of a closing trap. He stopped only a few paces away, his voice low but full of venom. "You think words will keep you safe. Little queen," he said to her, "a human's protection is worth nothing here." His eyes shifted to Ethan. "And you?" Enjoy the illusion while you can. Ethan didn't respond with speech. Instead, he met the warlord's stare with the same steady calm he had used in the streets. A silence that refused to give ground. The girl's fingers brushed against his hand for just a moment, a small act of defiance right in front of the man who wanted her most. The masked figure finally spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. The vow has been heard. The hall bears witness. It cannot be undone except by challenge. The warlord's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. Ethan knew exactly what was coming next. "Then I challenge," the warlord said, his words sharp. As a blade, the room erupted in noise, nobles shouting, some in approval, others in protest. Ethan glanced at the girl. Her face was pale, but her chin was high. She did not look away from him. The masked figure raised his staff. The hall went quiet again. By law, the challenge must be met with weapon or with wit before the next moonrise. His gaze swept from the warlord to Ethan. "You may refuse." Human, but then the bond breaks, and she returns to him. Ethan's hand tightened around the edge of the table. He could feel the weight of every noble's attention. The girl's eyes burned into his, her voice just loud enough for him to hear. "If you walk away, I am lost." There was no more hesitation. Ethan stepped forward until he stood almost chest to chest with the warlord. "I accept." His voice was steady. The girl's breath caught, but she didn't speak. The warlord's smile returned, slow and cruel. "Then prepare yourself, human," he said. "Tomorrow. Your right ends with your life." The nobles erupted again. The masked figure struck his staff against the floor, silencing them. "The challenge is set," he declared. "Until it is resolved, the bond holds. The first night remains unbroken." The feast ended without joy, the nobles leaving in tense clusters. Ethan and the girl walked together in silence, toward the private chambers the ritual had granted them. Her hand brushed against his again, a quiet reminder that the night they shared might be the only shield between her and the man waiting to take her. The morning came with a thin light slipping through the high stone windows. The air was cool, carrying the faint metallic scent of the city's smoldering ruins. Ethan stood in the center of the challenge arena, a wide circle of black stone surrounded by towering pillars. Beyond them sat the nobles, silent and waiting. The warlord was already there, his black armor gleaming, a long curved blade in his hands. The girl stood behind the boundary line, her silver hair lifted slightly by the morning wind. Her eyes never left Ethan. She didn't shout or call out encouragement, but her gaze carried the weight of everything they had been through. The masked figure raised his staff, his voice echoing across the stone. "The challenge begins by weapon until one yields or one falls." The warlord moved first, his steps slow but certain, his blade angled like a predator's fang. Ethan adjusted his stance. The weapon they had given him felt heavier than he was used to. The first clash rang like a bell, steel against steel. The force of the blow vibrated through Ethan's arms. The warlord was stronger, his strikes heavy. Meant to break through defense, Ethan gave ground, letting his opponent come forward, his eyes scanning for patterns. Another strike came, then another, the warlord's attacks quickening. Ethan ducked one swing, letting it pass close enough to feel the air move. He countered with a sharp kick to the man's knee. The warlord grunted but didn't stumble, his eyes narrowing. The nobles whispered from their seats, some leaning forward in anticipation. The girl's hands tightened into fists. Ethan could see the warlord's confidence. This was just a game to him, a way to humiliate a human before killing him. Ethan let the man press him to the edge of the circle, his back almost touching one of the pillars. Then, in a sudden burst, he shifted sideways, letting the warlord's momentum carry him forward. His own blade slashed upward. catching the man's arm, sparks flying as metal scraped against armor. The warlord snarled, stepping back, a thin line of green blood seeping through a gap in his. Plating, the crowd reacted with gasps. Ethan didn't waste the moment. He pressed forward. Forcing the warlord to defend, their blades clashed again and again, ringing in the open air. Then the warlord twisted, catching Ethan's wrist and shoving him hard to the ground. The stone was cold under his palms. The warlord's blade came down, but Ethan rolled, the strike biting into the floor instead. Ethan came up fast, swinging for the warlord's side. The hit connected with a loud crack. The larger man stumbled. His armor dented. Ethan's breath was sharp and fast now, sweat mixing with the dust on his skin. The warlord roared and came at him with renewed fury. Every strike harder than the last. Ethan's arms ached, but he refused to give ground. The girl's eyes followed every move. Her lips pressed together, as if holding back the words she wanted to shout. Finally, Ethan saw his chance. The warlord raised his blade high for a killing blow, and Ethan stepped in, too close for the strike to land. His own weapon turning in his grip, driving the blunt edge hard against the warlord's throat guard. The impact sent the man reeling backward. Gasping for breath, Ethan didn't hesitate. He hooked his leg behind the warlord's and shoved. The larger man crashed to the ground, his blade skittering away across the stone. The arena went silent except for the sound of Ethan's breathing. He stood over the warlord, his weapon poised. The man glared up at him, pride burning even in defeat. Do it. The warlord spat. Ethan's eyes flicked briefly to the girl, her expression unreadable. Then back to the man beneath him. No, Ethan said, his voice low but carrying in the quiet arena. You don't get an honorable death. You live knowing you were beaten by a human. He stepped back, lowering his weapon. The masked figure raised his staff, his voice ringing out. The challenge is decided. The bond stands. The protector prevails. The nobles erupted in noise, some cheering, others shouting in anger. The warlord rose slowly, his face twisted with rage, but he could not speak without breaking the law. He turned and walked from the arena, his steps heavy. The girl crossed the boundary and came to Ethan's side, her voice soft, meant for him alone. You kept your vow. He met her gaze, the morning light catching in her eyes. And you're safe, he replied. The crowd faded from his awareness. The noise of the arena, distant now. The war, the politics, the danger, they would come again, but for this moment, she was his and he was hers, bound not just by law, but by choice. Asterisk.